Minerva presents. Welcome, dear listeners, to another exciting journey through the world of books. Get ready to be spellbound as we dive into the captivating pages of Beautiful Losers by Leonard Cohen. Beautiful Losers by using Leonard Cohen is a flow of attention tale of an unnamed folklorist dwelling in a psychosexual hell. Having misplaced his wife and male lover, he turns to the records of an Iroquois saint for his salvation. The Radical is a depiction of non-secular craving in the orgiastic humanistic days of the mid-1960s. In Bankruptcy 1, the narrator addresses the blessed Iroquois girl Catherine Tekakwitha. She died within the late 17th century, and now the narrator longs to be together with her. He recalls his deceased pal and lover, from syphilis. Now, our narrator is stricken by melancholy and crippling constipation. In Bankruptcy 2, our narrator introduces himself. He is a folklorist and student of the Canadian tribe, a pitiful tribe that has been decreased to a handful of survivors. In Bankruptcy 3, he explains that his aim in analyzing Catherine Tekakwitha is to understand her not as a Catholic image, but as an individual. In Chapter 4, the narrator recalls F, telling him that he longs to have intercourse with a saint. In Bankruptcy 5, the narrator remembers the night that his wife Edith killed herself. He lives in a basement condominium, and one day Edith, trying to take revenge on him, climbs into the elevator shaft and is overwhelmed. That night, F sits with the narrator and attempts to consolation him. F admits to slumbering with Edith a few times and proceeds to carry out oral sex on the narrator. In Chapter 6, the narrator remembers an afternoon while F makes a decision to paint a miniature version of the Greek Acropolis with crimson nail polish. He locations the crimson version in the sun and feedback that the Indians need to have created a similar shape. The narrator protests that they failed to, and F is going on a tirade pronouncing that the narrator needs to fuck a saint. In Bankruptcy 7, the narrator enumerates the Iroquois nation tribes that almost overcame the French. Among them were the Mohawks, of which Catherine Tekakwitha become one. He remembers a day while Edith covered herself in black, face paint, and invited him to do the equal so they could make love as different human beings. However, he refused. In Bankruptcy 8, the narrator explains how many French priests were killed proselytizing to the Canadian tribes, their hearts eaten by the chiefs. Catherine's mom, but turned into an Iroquois convert. In Chapter 9, F is acting oral intercourse on the narrator. F chastises him now not to experience guilty for their interest, which he says isn't precisely homosexual. The narrator recognizes that Edith became an The History of them All, Chapters 10-13. In Bankruptcy 10, the narrator longs to be a long-time voice in society, speaking publicly towards any repressive organization, be it the Communist Bloc, the Canadian Parliament, the Roman Catholic Church, or any other variety of examples. In Bankruptcy 11, the narrator explains how the Iroquois lived in lengthy homes that held numerous households and had been considered immoral by using French missionaries for his or her lack of privateness between the sexes. He compares it to a movie theater at nighttime, stifling in its inherent sexuality. In Chapter 12, he reads about the plague that spread through Catherine Tekakwitha's village when she changed into younger. The studying depresses the narrator, and he distracts himself, thinking about the fleeting adventure of Edith's lips over his frame. He wants her to linger on his genitals, but he does no longer recognize a way to ask. F shows that he both call for oral sex from her or learn how to love her grazing tongue. F argues that those glancing kisses are an expression of affection, that each he and Edith love the narrator greater than he can believe. After Edith dies, F admits that he and she played a touch phone recreation in a railroad station even as the narrator become in the toilet. They suck each different's fingers and place them in each other's ears. The narrator is heartbroken through this. Learning the Iroquois plague after each F and Edith have died, the narrator thinks of Edith's navel and lists every liquid, from semen to rainwater to tears, that it has held. In Bankruptcy 13, the narrator has stopped running because the plague analyzing and his list concerning Edith's navel. He has additionally emerged as constipated, going days without a bowel movement. He prays to any god so that it will help him, and he resolves now not to enter he bathroom till he can pass stool for going showers. The records of all of them, chapters 14-19. In chapter 14, the narrator recollects FT's fevered tirades and starts a fevolve to overlook him extraordinarily. He unearths that F's personality is taking over his. He remembers the day that F purchased the textile manufacturing unit wherein he used to paintings. He gallivants through the deserted warehouse, recalling how he vowed to his enterprise that in the future he'd very own the manufacturing unit. F starts to tear up. In chapter 15, the narrator describes Catherine Tekakwita's circle of relatives' adventure up the Mohawk River after the plague. They settle right into a small village, wherein Catherine makes satisfactory crafts and wampum. The chapter ends with an indictment of the Canadian authorities and the Roman Catholic Church for their subjugation of native tribes and well-known sexual repression. In Bankruptcy 16, the narrator describes the day in 1664, whilst Catherine changed into to be married off to a Mohawk warrior. She is being tended by means of ants for the simple rite whilst the younger guy enters her tent. She offers him a chunk of food and that they consummate the wedding. The younger brave enters with a massive erection, and although Catherine is aroused, she flees into the wooded area. The young man follows her, however, he can't discover her. Returning in shame, he's crushed with the aid of the men of the tribe and disowned by using his family. Chapter 17 is a secular prayer to God written through the narrator. In Bankruptcy 18F, and the narrator eat olives, and F is expounding upon Guy's preference to alter the sector round him. F offers the narrator an English, Greek translation, e-book. He says it's miles a prayer, book, translation being an inherently sacred act. In chapter 19, the narrator relates a story from Edith's youth when she turned into chased down within the woods by way of a collection of white guys who proceeded to rape her. The narrator admits that he cannot sense hatred for the guys because he is familiar with the irresistible electricity of the younger native frame. What strikes him most is Edith's declaration that she known as to Catherine Tekakwita for help. Lauren considered one of her attackers to tears. The history of them all. In Bankruptcy 20, the narrator recalls the nighttime that Edith killed herself. He and F ate collectively, and F did no longer end his meal. In Bankruptcy 21, he inventories the fireworks that F left to him after his loss of life. In Chapter 22, the narrator starts a fevolved to lose his sanity, locked in his Montreal condominium after the deaths of Edith and F. He lighting certainly one of F's fireworks. Chapter 23 is some other prayer to God made with the aid of the narrator, begging for blessing in trade for forgetting the transgressions of F and Edith. In chapter 24, the narrator burns himself with F's fireworks. He's placing them indoors, masking his apartment in ash. He has stopped cleansing himself, and his living surroundings is getting filthy. In Bankruptcy 25, he starts masturbating regularly, masking his rental in semen. He maintains to burn himself with the fireworks. As he masturbates, he recalls making love to Edith. He remembers offering oral stimulation to Edith's anus, proof that they love each different. The bankruptcy devolves into a nonsensical circuit of intercourse terms. In chapter 26, the narrator reads an e-book about Catherine Tekakwitha written by means of Edward Lecomte, a Jesuit priest who fell in love together with her. In chapter 27, he loses his experience of time. He's nevertheless constipated and constantly burns his arms with F's fireworks. He fears that Edith could have been disgusted by means of him in chapter 28. In Bankruptcy 29, the narrator recalls how F controlled to lose weight and advantage muscles with the Charles Axis fitness plan. F found out about the plan from a commercial in a comedian e-book telling the tale of a skinny weakling who uses the Axis plan to bulk up and beat up the bully who stole his lady. The narrator thinks F is crazy. The plan is meant for thin weaklings, now not fat ones. F succeeds even though in getting match. One day on the seashore, a muscular bully kicks sand in F's face, but he does nothing. The bully is Charles Axis. In chapter 30, the narrator finds a notice from F inside the bottom of the fireworks container. It instructs him to turn on the radio. Playing is a song by means of Gavin Gate and the Goddesses, a pop institution with a supreme-esque love music. The narrator is swept up inside the song, convinced that it's far a chronicle of an orgy among Gavin and his goddesses. After the song ends, he calls the DJ and shouts at her nonsensically about his constipation and burns. She hangs up on him, and he goes outdoor to name her once more from a pay smartphone. Out of doors, he realizes the observe is a ploy to get him out of his hellish apartment. Bankruptcy 31 is a false syllogism proving that the narrator is the King of France. In chapter 32, the narrator relates how France sent missionaries throughout the Iroquois country who succeeded greatly in converting large swaths of natives and turned them into Catholic missionaries. In Bankruptcy 33, the narrator yearns to have each type of religious metal viable. Chapter 34, information the French missionaries venture converting the Iroquois who would plug their ears whilst one talked to them. The French overcame this by painting scenes of natives with plugged ears being tortured in hell. The records of them all. Chapters 35-43. In chapter 35, the narrator relates the mindset of Catherine Tekakwitha's uncle. He dislikes the French missionaries who have converted a prodigious portion of the village, which include Kryn, leader of the Mohawks. The neighborhood priest leaves the village in 1670. However, he is soon changed by way of every other Jacques de Lamberville. In Bankruptcy 36, the narrator places the time frame of these activities in historical context, naming other good-sized matters that took place right now. As he hoes this, he begins to consider F and curses death for taking the two individuals who cherished him away. In Bankruptcy 37, the new priest in Catherine's village begins to rub down her toes. He starts to lick them, and Catherine shouts out that she wants to be baptized. As this takes place, her uncle starts a favolve to feel the loss of life out of his humans and grows vulnerable. Catherine asks him if she may be baptized, and he consents with the caveat that she by no means leave the village. He tells her that their way of existence is coming to an cease. Chapter 38 is every other of the narrator's prayers to God. He asks why he has been positioned in this position. In Bankruptcy 39, he and F are using to Ottawa. F has been elected to Parliament, and he is teeming with exhilaration. As they power, F starts off evolved to masturbate. The narrator watches and cannot help, however, be aroused. He begins to masturbate himself, and as he is ready to orgasm, the automobile careens off the street. The narrator is terrified by F, admits that the close to loss of life in joy turned into organized by him and Edith. The narrator is shocked that Edith is aware of his sexual relationship with Up. They keep directly to Ottawa. In Chapter 40, the narrator considers what F supposed through his recommendation to fuck a saint. He considers that a saint is not a person that seeks to alter the arena, but instead a person that exists at peace within it, that offers himself over to the arena. He wonders how he can get toward Catherine Tekakwitha. He publicizes her 1676 baptism in Chapter 41 and tells Edith that he misses her. In Bankruptcy 42, the narrator tells the tale of a French ceremonial dinner that Catherine attended. Because the gentlefolk speak, Catherine spills her glass of pink wine at the white tablecloth. The room falls silent because the cloth is engulfed in crimson. The narrator mentions in Bankruptcy 43 that the story is conceived of as an apocalyptic parable. He simplest finds it in positive texts of her life. He tells the story of a time in faculty whilst a case of warts spread and F might chunk them off. He laughed on the narrator for leaving his alone. Inside the bathroom, someday F drags the narrator in front of the other boys and holds him down while they forcibly cut off his warts. The records of all of them, chapters 44, 47. In chapter 44, the narrator info, how Edith explained the starting place of the Catherine Tekakwitha ceremonial dinner story to him. He, Edith, and F are mendacity under a sun lamp in their apartment, and that they insist he do so within the nude. As he lies there, F and Edith decide to shoot heroin. The narrator, who does no longer partake, excuses himself to rifle via Edith's drawers. There, he reveals a few male, order holy water. He bursts in to wake them and call to recognize the purpose for their proudly owning holy water. They have taken to shooting blended holy waters, Edith says. She then proceeds to calm the narrator, telling him the tale of the feast. Every week later, she kills herself. In chapter 45, the narrator, having at last left his disgusting condominium, is in F's treehouse. He has been there days, and he wonders what is in the top 10 lineup on the radio nowadays. He is buzzing the top 10 from days ago, however, assumes they had been changed. On this way, he reasons, the pinnacle 10 are like a faith similar to the Iroquois. In Bankruptcy 46, Catherine Tekakwitha's uncle is loss of life. The priest Jacques de Lamberville is trying to convince him to accept Christ, threatening him with eternal damnation. The uncle is unfazed, calmly explaining to the priest that heaven is for the French. He asks Catherine to strip so she can see what an antique Mohawk's body looks like. He explains the journey into the afterlife he need to adopt and how he need to be organized for it. After Catherine leaves the tent, her aunts accuse her of seducing her old uncle and beat her. De Lamberville inspects her to examine that she is a virgin and pronounces her righteous. In Bankruptcy 47, F wakes the narrator up and tells him to head out of doors with him. The narrator does not need to, and F drags him to his F naked and shames him. They cross outside wherein a protest in opposition to the 1964 go-to of Queen Elizabeth is raging. As F and the narrator watch the goings-on, a nameless girl slides her hand into the narrator's pants. As F joins the surging crowd, the narrator and the female satisfaction, each different. Just before he orgasms, although the crowd disperses and the woman slips away, the narrator panics and searches the square for her, causing a commotion, stops him, and pulls him domestic. On the manor, F tells him that he has handed his second to ultimate test. The records of all of them, chapters 48-52. In chapter 48, the narrator is still in F.E.O.'s tree residence, singing hit parade songs as the climate receives bloodless. He thinks about F's many satisfied dalliances and wonders why he could not have inherited F's memories in place of his possessions. Instead, he is craving after a long, useless, non-secular figure. He talks approximately the practices of Catholic missionaries in the Canadian Barren region and wonders what Catherine Tekakwitha's frame seems like these days. Catholic saints have a propensity of now not decomposing inside the ground, and the narrator enumerates numerous examples. He wonders why F has led him into the woods to be alone with his dead. In chapter 49, Catherine's unwell uncle has an idea to shop his lifestyles. He calls upon all of the young, single women within the village to come to his tent. Whilst they're assembled, he asks each what young hunter they will sleep with that night. All name their chosen men, except Catherine, who says she might, as an alternative, have sex with a thorn. The men are collected, and in the tent an orgy commences. The uncle crawls amid the copulating young humans, chanting a prayer for metamorphosis. The clergymen call it a heathen ceremony. In chapter 50, the narrator calls out to Edith and F in the howling wind. In his desires, he lay with each of them and wakes in discomfort. F, in the end, visits him in a dream and tells him that he has a challenge to carry out. F believes that the loose Quebec motion has grown soft and intends to make a formidable announcement all through Queen Elizabeth's go-to. He will blow up a statue of Queen Victoria during Elizabeth's speech. The narrator begs F now not to move. He pledges his love and fidelity to F, who departs. In chapter 51, he calls madly upon Catherine Tekakwitha. Sex, history, faith, music, and ache are intermingled in his frantic cry. In Bankruptcy 52, the narrator opens the English-Greek word book that F gave him as a prayer book. With deep conviction, he proceeds to pray to Catherine Tekakwitha with every of the categorized conversations in the e-book. Conversations for the dry cleaner, barber save, publish office, book place, etc. The word book is improperly written, and the prayers break down into damaged English. A long letter from F. F's long posthumous letter to the narrator begins with the hypothesis that the narrator, having inherited all of F's worldly assets, has started to co-opt his personality. He additionally denotes the inherent distinction among males and females. Girls hiss at the arena even as guys try and shush it. F views that Guy has been looking to shush a primal voice for hundreds of years. As F writes the letter, he is sitting in an asylum inside the very last tires of syphilis. A nurse named Mary Vaughan comes up in the back of him and watches him write. F talks about Edith, whom he disparages and whose relationship he dismisses out of turn. F believes that his latest humiliations and his expulsion from the Parliament are fading from the general public recognition. He is a hero of the young Canadian counterculture. Mary invites him, as he writes his letter, to rub down her vagina. He obliges, fingering her as he remembers his days at the Jewish-owned textile factory. He recalls, particularly, a derelict that used to panhandle on the manufacturing facility floor. The owners did not have the heart to kick him out. F wonders why he has dedicated so much of his lifestyles to the narrator and Edith, while he may want to have emerge as president if he desired. He pledges his timeless like to the narrator, saying the triangle between the two of them, and Edith became a truly mystical arrangement. As Mary starts off devolved to have her orgasm, F tells the narrator his vital lesson that he has been building to his whole lifestyles. God and magic exist in spite of Guy's efforts to smash them. As F writes this, he notices something in Mary's vagina. She has smuggled in a message from their pals. F tells the narrator that he gave him too small a field of fireworks. In addition, he should have given him his collection of soaps and sex toys that he prized. F considers himself and the narrator to be the new Jews. A new Jew, he says, is someone that delves into every concept and issue of society till she or he is going mad. F is going on to warn the narrator that he need to now not dedicate suicide. In fashionable, F fears that he has completed the narrator a disservice by immunizing him to ardor. He failed to know precisely a way to move about instructing him. F goes similarly, admitting that he never clearly knew what he desired in lifestyles. He in no way even dedicated fully to the unfastened Quebec movement, although it changed into the reason he changed into the expelled from Parliament. F tells a story about a night he spent with Edith. He took her to a luxurious dinner, after which up to a resort room. This is at some stage in their experiments to make their whole our bodies orgasmic, and F breaks down in Edith's palms when she blames him for ruining her courting with the narrator. She cannot have an orgasm of past due, so F is going to paintings together with his entire library of sexual texts. Without touching her, he brings her to the edge of overall orgasm. When he runs out of texts, F regales her with stories of the torture of French missionaries by Iroquois tribes. Edith is in affliction, and F brings her to orgasm with a Danish vibrator. She begins to use the vibrator on him, and the tool takes on a will of its personal. It ravishes Edith again before leaping from the window into the Atlantic, wherein it swims away. The exhausted fans are interrupted by the appealing Argentine waiter from the eating place. He proceeds to make like to both of them, after which he guides them both to the bath, wherein all of them wash with a special cleaning soap. The soap is crafted from human flesh and purifies them. Edith stops the waiter on the manner out and holds him. She believes he is an and Edith agree that they love the narrator and that he'll gain perfect transcendence. If he does so, although he's going to have to do it by myself. This verbal exchange, F says, is the beginning of Edith's suicide. F talks about the Iroquois notion that a soul need to undergo a adventure through a gauntlet before coming into the afterlife. He suggests that his ordeal in F's tree residence may be his gauntlet. F mentions his hit bombing of the Queen Victoria statue, for which he misplaced his parliament seat and a thumb. F argues that he does no longer want Quebec independence, surely due to the fact he's French. He wants to tear Canada apart earlier than he dies. F closes this phase of his letter, a preamble of kinds, by promising the narrator deliverance from his ache. He intends to element the final weeks of Catherine Tekakwitha. The phase ends with two poetic, and heavily footnoted invocations of records. A long letter from F, chapters 116. With Bankruptcy 1, F starts of evolved to inform the story of Catherine Tekakwitha's final weeks. In 1677, Catherine hears of the task of St. Louis from a Anu missionary. Father de Lamberville arranges for her to travel upriver to the challenge. She does no longer fear about breaking her promise to her uncle. De Lamberville blesses Catherine, and he or she leaves the village. In Chapter 2, she is met at the mission by way of the head priests, Claude and Pierre. She carries a letter of introduction from de Lamberville. She is assigned a mistress, an Iroquois convert christened Anastasie. Catherine prays each day at a go by the river. In Chapter 3, the monks and Anastasie try and convince Catherine to marry. They've a younger guy in mind. However, Catherine does not need to marry. She additionally wants to begin to speedy. In Chapter 4, F paints a bad portrait of the local converts at the mission. They go through any variety of painful acts of contrition, from sporting belts that dig spikes into their pores and skin to submerging themselves in freezing water. Catherine begins to forsake all meals. In Bankruptcy 5, Catherine prays within the forest, cutting her frame with stones. In Bankruptcy 6, she walks all through the fields and woods, observing the animals of the forest and the plants. She questions God as to why human beings need to eat to stay. F cites a scientific have a look at that, compares the skulls of Iroquois to those of Caucasians in Bankruptcy 7. In Bankruptcy 8EF, discusses Catherine Tekakwitha's best buddy on the venture, a widow named Tagayagenta. She is a stunning lady who misplaced her husband during a hunting trip for the duration of which the institution fell quick of meals. The organization became reduced to cannibalism, and Tagayagenta is racked with guilt over her complicity. Catherine asks her what human flesh tastes like. Tagayagenta says it tastes like red meat. In Bankruptcy 9, the two girls strip collectively to whip each different. Catherine compares her frame to her pals. These beatings and fasting retain over the path of Bankruptcy 10. Catherine prays to God approximately her iniquity. In Bankruptcy 11, F describes the atrocities of the battle between the French and the Iroquois. One nighttime, as Catherine whips Tagayagenta becomes a virgin once more. In Chapter 12, F compares Catherine Tekakwitha's speedy to the ones of other saints, some of whom went years without meals. Catherine asks Pierre if she will be able to take an oath of chastity in Bankruptcy 13. She is the primary Iroquois to achieve this. As days move on, Pierre and Claude are mystified by peculiar bleeding wounds that seem on Catherine's frame. In Bankruptcy 14, they come as much as her lodging to locate her wrapped tightly in a blanket. Then they pull the blanket away. They locate that she has coated it with spikes and thorns. Horrified, they try to extricate her, but they appear captivated by her frame. In Bankruptcy 15, F contends that his have a look at of Catherine Tekakwitha. He too has become enamored of her. He wonders about the alternative ladies he has worshipped, like Brigitte Bardot, Eva Peron, and Madame Bovary. He apologizes to Mary Vaughan for thinking of other girls whilst touching her. She assures him it is okay. In Bankruptcy 16, Catherine is demised, and she desires to take communion. The monks agree, and he or she starts receiving the penitent in her lodging. They confess their sins to her. Days earlier than her death, Catherine crawls into the woods and whips herself. The day before she dies, she takes communion. An extended letter from F, chapter 17, 24. Catherine Tekakwitha dies in Bankruptcy 17. The first marvelous occasion takes place immediately after, whilst her face turns white and her marked skin heals to an alabaster glow. The priests are amazed and begin to put together her coffin. In chapter 18, F remarks on the racial implications of Catholicism's obsession with whiteness, typified by using this episode related to Catherine. In Bankruptcy 19, Catherine is prepared for burial and given a large funeral at the Challenge. Claude argues that she need to be buried inside the church, but Pierre insists that she be interred at her favorite prayer place, on the cross, by using the river. Day after today, the venture is fevered with penitent acts. Some beat themselves and others take vows of chastity. Claude makes a rosary in Catherine's honor. In Bankruptcy 20, F cites a French army commander who is cured of gout in 1696 after praying to Catherine Tekakwitha. F, with a bit of luck, plans, in Bankruptcy 21, to depart his asylum with Mary Vaughan, return to the Parliament, and maintain his bid for the presidency. In Chapter 22, F discusses the various visions of Catherine Tekakwitha which are stated in the later 17th century. Quickly after her dying, she seems to Claude. Later, Catherine appears to each Anastasie and Tegagenta, informing her how first class to whip herself. She appeared numerous other times to Claude, who commenced painting likenesses of her, certainly one of which nevertheless exists. F recommends that the narrator see it. In Chapter 23, F enumerates the various miracles related to Catherine. A Montreal lady is saved from the threshold of loss of life in 1680, one by way of Catherine's crucifix. After this miracle, she keeps a vial of dust from Catherine's grave round her neck. She is with pain each time she removes it, even for a second. In 1693, the advanced of a monetary regains use of his hands while praying to her. A French aristocrat is cured of a persistent bloodless. Later, each a cow and a steer are saved from loss of life via dust from Catherine's tomb. A doctor became priest therapies, a woman of painful syphilis sores, with a prayer Catherine. In Bankruptcy 24, F describes the final resting region of Catherine Tekakwitha's frame. In his closing to the letter, F describes the modern-day scene on St. Catherine Road in Montreal with its well-known system theater. Corporations of susceptible, willed vegetarians loaf around there, and angry ticket takers verbally abuse customers. F hears dogs barking outside, and Mary Vaughan demands her get rid of their pal's message from her vagina. The now not suggests that Free Quebec militants will ruin him out of the asylum that night. The radio declares that he escapes to the woods and Mary, his accomplice, is mauled through puppies. F tells the narrator he loves him and begs him to live life as F tried to. Beautiful losers. An epilogue in the third character. The epilogue starts on the first day of spring and in vintage Dirty Man. Presumably F is walking along the seaside, excited that wintry weather is over. A young boy seems, and the old man tries to persuade him to take off his clothes. However, the boy really wants to pay attention, a story approximately the Iroquois. The antique man tells him some Mohawk phrases, and the boy says that the Canadian police have interviewed him. He instructed them approximately his sexual dating with the old guy. The vintage guy hitchhikes at the sparsely populated highway. An appealing female pulls over and curtly invites him in. She is bare from the waist down and orders him to perform oral sex on her. He obliges until they arrive downtown. It's miles now night, and the vintage man wanders down St. Catherine Road, preventing with the aid of the device theater to look a triple function. He cannot see the movie, however, because his eyes are blinking in time with the projector. After he leaves the theater, he makes his manner to an arcade. After being admitted, he's recognized by the people internal. Some understand him as F, and others because the pervert the police are attempting to find. As they may be about to capture him, he transforms right into a movie display screen, showing a Ray Charles performance. The narrator publicizes that the give-up of his novel has been rented out to the Roman Catholic Church. The church implores the reader to pray for miracles within the name of Catherine Tekakwitha in order that she may be canonized. The narrator closes with a thank you and farewell to the reader.